Hey everyone, welcome to episode 125 of Experts in the Wire. My guest today is Olga from SEO Sly, and also some exciting news from Experts in the Wire. We have a new sponsor, Stacker Studio, who I'm very excited to tell you all about a little bit later in this episode. But let's jump in. Olga, how are you?
Hi, Dan. I'm doing great. I'm very happy to be here. How are you?
I'm excellent, thank you. So I wanted to ask a little question about your background. So I know you've been doing SEO for quite a while, right? And your content you put out, it's incredible and it's amazing. But I noticed you did 1 year stint in-house for an SEO company. And I was really curious, how did your brief time working in-house as an SEO, how did that impact how you go about doing SEO? Like, was there anything that you really learned from that in-house SEO experience?
That's a good question. To be honest, I didn't really enjoy this in-house role as much, and I am kind of an agency person. When I went into the agency, I really kind of liked it very much, way more. But if I were to say what I liked about it, what that I had like a complete control over what was happening to the site. I was the person who was introducing changes, optimizations. But in this particular firm, it was kind of complex because I had to learn Git. I think this is how you pronounce it, and I couldn't like just make changes directly in WordPress. So I need to learn a bit of coding. So this was because of that experience wasn't like the best for me because I am like more into like introducing changes straight into WordPress, directly into in WordPress. I know some coding, but not that much. So I would say the complete control and the fact that I was sure that whatever I recommended would be implemented, because in most cases it would be me who would implement those changes. So that's kind of the thing, I think, which maybe how it impacted my further career was that at the agency at which I was working later on, I managed to influence the way they kind of work with clients. That at first, when I started, we practically weren't able to implement changes directly on those sites on our clients,
Mm-hmm.
but it slowly started to change. And finally, from I think after a couple of years, I was one of the first people who were able to like take the client site into my own hands and do some stuff there. Of course, that was not possible with all clients, but at least with some like closer clients, I would say. So
Yep.
I would say that was the biggest impact.
Were there any experiences that you can recall that had a really big impact on your learning in SEO and your sort of advancement of your knowledge? So for me, like I can think of way back actually hand coding canonical tags into a website I was building, with code, right? That just
Mm-hmm.
experience of like understanding how you can pull in a canonical tag with code dynamically, that really impacted my just understanding of how the web works and then how things like meta tags and SEO directives work. And doing this podcast would be another really great example. I
Mm-hmm.
learn a lot from people like yourself. But are there any experiences for you that you think back to where you really jumped, leaps and as far as how you learned?
So I would say this dates back to my very beginnings of SEO, which is around 2010, 11, 12, around that time. This is where I kind of discovered this thing. And I then started with, this was kind of I think it is still available, Site Build It, Solo Build It. This is kind of a program course, a very crash course on SEO, which teaches you SEO and at the same time how to build a website like from very, very scratch. You start with like brainstorming ideas, topics, keyword research. Like the entire process is very, very detailed and very like long.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it takes you like have a year to build a site, but once you build it, you actually have content that's optimized around keywords, stuff like that. So I would say doing following that process a couple of times, because I created, I don't know, 5, maybe 6, maybe 7 sites this way. before I actually those sites started to actually gain some traffic, some Google AdSense money. So this is like following this process allowed me to get my first job in SEO as an in-house, then at an agency side. So I would say this was the biggest, like, because once I started, even though I was kind of a junior, I already knew the entire process, and I already had a small portfolio of sites that had some results, limited results.
That's a cool experience. And what is the name of that site again?
It is called Solo Build It, I think now. It
Build
used to be called Site Build It. Yeah.
Okay.
Like if you want to like read about SEO, they have so much, so many things, so many articles, in-depth articles, books are integrated into that as well. So yeah,
That's
this was
really
my
awesome.
starting point.
And we've been doing SEO basically about the exact amount of time. So I think it was like
Mm-hmm.
2009 or so, 2010 is when I also discovered it and got into it as well. We should also tell people how you and I originally met, because a lot of my guests, literally the first time I've ever talked to them, but we were actually introduced by Ashley Berman Hale, who ran United Search for a little while, and they did a stint where it was a mentorship program where some people were connected, like you, for instance, you wanted to get into speaking and things like that, right? And I believe we were connected to basically kind of go over some of your presentations and kind of like work on slides and stuff like that. How was that experience for you? And then we'll talk about that real quick, and then we'll get to talking about the biggest SEO mistakes that people make.
Sure. So this was, I think, around 3, 4, 5 months after I created my site about SEOSLY. Because before that, I was kind of always hidden. I usually did not put my name on any of my sites, but finally, around 2020, around I think it was August, I decided to create a site and to start sharing my knowledge, because I already was a couple of years into SEO. And after that, I was looking for ways to kind of build my brand, my authority, to start like talking to people I had been already admiring for a long time. And then I kind of came across United Search. I applied. I was sure that probably I wouldn't be accepted, but I think it was around the December. I
Yep.
got an email that I was accepted. It was so like such a shock to me that it's happening. And then I was preparing together with you for my first presentation. I was supposed to pitch to attend some conference as a speaker, but actually I didn't have to do that, because I think around during the time when we were doing this kind of coaching, I was invited as a speaker to SMX Advanced, and kind of from there things kind of started to speed up really quick. So
I remember
that was a
that was
nice
amazing.
experience.
That's right. Yeah. So I think we did about 4 or 5 phone calls where we went through your presentation. And that's awesome how that works. I think just sort of starting that process going, even though you didn't necessarily even have to do a actual pitch, is a great way to kind of get discovered and get some speaking opportunities. So let's talk about SEO mistakes. So you have an article on your site, SEOSLY, and it's a list of the top 100 SEO mistakes. First of all, I do want to go through some of these mistakes so the listeners can go to their websites and kind of make sure that they're not doing these mistakes. But first of all, can you explain how you compiled this list? Because this is a long list of 100 mistakes. And I'm curious how you were able to kind of put this list together.
So at my previous job, so I had been kind of an SEO auditor, then kind of SEO auditor expert, I would say, for around 7 years. So in this job, I think, except for the first 2 years, all I was doing in-depth SEO audits. I was kind of the person who created like this entire process. I was changing it. I was creating templates. I was kind of thinking about ways to make this process better. So I really, during those 5 years, I would say I really audited a ton of websites. And so part of my experience knowledge comes from that. And once I created my site and my site started to get some traction, I actually like managed to get a lot of clients for whom I was doing audits. Like simply
Okay.
people were hiring me to do an audit for them. So this way I also managed to do a lot of audits. I think I created around more than 150 so far. I'm not sure if this is like the exact number, but kind of around that number. And in May, I think I was thinking about a topic to share, and then I thought that I have so many audits on my Google Drive, so many files, so maybe I will go through some of them and share some of the mistakes, the most the most frequent mistakes I come across when I do an audit, and this is how I created that. So I basically reviewed those audits, make a list. In some cases, maybe some of those mistakes do not come from audits, but I come across them so often that I thought that they still deserve like a separate point there. And then I just listed them and started to write. And I think it took me about a week and a half, and the list was ready.
Oh, wow. I think people often forget that if you're doing work, you have the raw ingredients to create really great content. And I think that's one thing you've done really well here by taking your actual work that you've done over the years, searching through your Google Docs and assembling something across all of those audits, which is a really, really great way to come up with content. So let's dive into these. And you have 100 in the list here. So we're not going to go through all 100, obviously, but I think what you're going to do is pick out some of the best of the best mistakes.
Yeah.
Right? So what I want have you do is introduce the mistake, and then just we'll chat a little bit about, why it's a mistake and how people can try to avoid these sort of mistakes and fix them. So what is mistake number one?
So I would say low value links. This is like the mistake which I hate the most and which I come across the most. So what I mean by low value links, usually this is that, for example, on the blog page or on the homepage, instead of having a text link that contains like the name of the product or like the keywords that like the phrase that describes what it links to, it contains read more or learn more, check, something that's like very generic and does not carry any SEO value to Google. And probably I think to screen reader users as well. So I would say low value links are very, very not liked by me.
Yeah, and I know I believe in the Lighthouse, I think they're called maybe non-descriptive anchors, or there's an ADA compliance way to describe those. What's your method for finding these? I know usually I just stumble on them manually. Right?
Yeah.
Is there a way that's a little more scalable or easy to find these, or what's your approach to looking for them?
So I always start every audit with a manual review, and usually it is like 30 seconds, and I can say how the site is built. It is just a look at the blog or the homepage, and I can immediately say. Of course, I always crawl websites, so I crawl the site with both Sidebulb and Screaming Frog, and there's the report there that shows you anchor text and the most often used anchor text. So it's quite easy to find it like this way if I want to like see the internal linking structure across the entire site.
So maybe if you see a lot of read mores for anchors, that might send off a flag that they're not using descriptive anchors. I like that you start with a manual review. Why do you find that works best in your approach for auditing?
I think if you have some experience, then you can immediately kind of get like the general feel of the website and immediately say what kind of an audit it will be and whether this site requires a lot of work, a lot of like focus. Sometimes it will change your kind of direction of your audit if you immediately see that there is some problem. So I think it kind of sets the stage for your audit. And sometimes, like for example, at the agency I worked, I was assigned with a task to find the reason. I was supposed to do an audit and audit the site, and at the same time find the reason why the site does not rank for its branded queries. So I was like, I prepared the template, and I was just about to like start checking everything, and I started with the manual review, and like the first thing I noticed was the site wasn't ranking for branded keywords because it had a no index tag on all pages. So
Oh, wow.
so it wasn't
That's
like
not
it
good.
wasn't ranking for branded keywords. It wasn't indexed. So I
Right.
had like this Chrome extension, which immediately shows me if the site has a no index tag. So I didn't even have to like check the code. I just loaded the site in Chrome, and I immediately saw that the color of this extension changed. So I just like knew right away that I don't need to like create the entire audit because I have the
Right.
solution right away.
Isn't it kind of fun when a client comes to you and they're like, our site's not ranking, and you discover the no index, and then you sort of feel like a genius or like, the
Yeah,
hero in that
yeah.
situation? Let me ask a question too about the low value links before we move on to the next mistake. What about, so oftentimes in like WordPress templates, on a blog homepage, a blog roll, you'll see the picture, the title, and the description of the blog post like in a block, right? Often
Hmm.
3 blocks across on desktop. And a lot of templates link to the article in that entire block.
Yes,
So if you go into the code, the anchor is around that entire like div or
yes.
CSS element or whatever it is. Oftentimes, I recommend that they actually add a anchor to the text itself. What do you think about that? Am I being maybe a little too nitpicky there, or is that something as well that's not sending good, clear anchor text signals
So
to
yeah,
Google?
so I am doing exactly the same. I always recommend changing that element so that there is a text link, and maybe there can also be an image link with an alt text
Uh,
that's kind of relevant. So that's usually my recommendation. I always recommend removing that,
oh,
splitting
good.
that into actual href links.
Excellent. So let's move on to mistake number 2. What is that one?
Okay, so I would say the mistake number 2 will be a bit similar to that. It is load more, having like those load more infinite scroll.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, in some cases, it may be kind of okay. In many cases, it is not okay. So the sites I have been reviewing, and the sites from which I have this example are the sites which had this load more button on the blog and on all category pages. And on top of that, they also had, usually not all of them, they had a no index tag on blog categories. So basically only the main blog was indexable, and it was indexable, and there was a no index tag on blog categories, and in some cases even on the blog. So on top of not being indexed, Google was not able to crawl. And in addition, one of those sites also had those read more links. So not only were like those links totally irrelevant,
Yeah.
Google was not able to see all of them. And yeah.
So for the load more, what you're saying is it's a load more button that instead of traditional pagination where you would click page 2 and it would load a new URL, what is this load more doing? It's calling the next set of blog posts in
Yes.
JavaScript, right?
Yes, exactly. So, and Googlebot does not click, usually does not click links, elements, like there's a JavaScript event, bot may not see it. Of course, I remember in Google documentation, it says that it is able to expand this load more for until like some length. I don't remember exactly the number of pixels.
Mm-hmm.
But I would still, for the sake of SEO, good practices, internal linking, I always recommend having like regular pagination instead of like trying implementing load more.
And I think you bring up a good point because, nowadays in 2022, Google is a lot better at rendering JavaScript content. But the big difference here that I think the listeners want to pick up on is that Google's not clicking the load more link. So any JavaScript that is going to be rendered on the initial load of a page, right? Google's going to
Mm-hmm.
see that. Is that correct? But they're not going to click something to then see
Yes.
it. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. What is mistake number 3?
Okay, so I have the list. Let me check which one I think. So maybe I would say this is again like a fundamental SEO knowledge. I would say the corrupt, very complicated, overly complicated structure of headings. So like even recently, I've audited the site, and it had like basically everything it had on the homepage was marked as a heading, including cookie notice, some testimonials, which were completely unrelated, like to the entire topic of the site.
Hmm.
And I'm pretty sure that such structure of headings like was sending mixed signals to Google. Like Google didn't really know what the site is talking about. Is it talking about this or that? No clear focus, and like hundreds, sometimes hundreds, there are even hundreds of headings. So I always recommend treating headings like chapters in a book, and making sure that each heading actually like kind of connects to the main topic of this site, of this page. And each heading acts as a subtopic, and is kind of, there is some description in the area within that heading or subheading. So
And you specifically mean H tags, right? H1, 2, 3, 4,
yes, yes,
etc.
yes.
And so, what's the way that you might go about finding that kind of issue?
So
Crawling? Is it manual review? How do you find those?
So again, I usually start with manual review. I manually review like the most representative pages, which is usually the homepage, the category page, like the article page, depending on the type of the
Hmm.
site. And in those cases, I use either detailed SEO Chrome extension or web developer. There's this bucket like information outline the information, document outline, something like that, and then a new tab opens and you see like the entire structure of headings, and you can immediately see what it looks like. And for like mass checks, it is usually like Screaming Frog or Sidebulb. And
It's interesting too because there was a period of time, and since we've been doing SEO the same amount of time, tell me if this was your experience as well. Probably like 2013 to 18 or so. Like I really didn't focus on headers much at all.
Mhm.
But when Google started getting a lot more semantic and then using featured snippets for headers and so on and so forth, then I really started to again start to pay a lot more attention to headers. Did you go through that a period of time as well where like they weren't on your radar as much? I'm just curious from
To
your
be
perspective.
honest, I think, yeah, I was, yeah, because I like one of my first sites, I was like, usually, to be honest, stuffed keywords. I was
Yeah.
stuffing keywords using exact my anchor text, like even in the domain. So yeah, I was like always making sure that I have those headings, those keywords whenever I can have them. But I remember there was a time around, I think 2015, where people like were trying to create a page that absolutely answered like everything, every aspect of a given topic within like there could be like 100 headings, and each subheading had like a piece of content, and the idea was that it would rank for like everything relating to
Right.
that topic. And I think now it's kind of still is it's kind of moving into the direction that we can have like this parent page, but we focus on creating like that. We would rather, well, we would rather create more smaller pages instead of creating one very gigantic. But of
Interesting.
course that
Yeah,
depends on the topic niche, but like speaking generally.
that's right. So I think we're on 4. Mistake number 4.
Yeah, 4. Okay. So I would say no text on the homepage. So very often I
Huh.
see there is a homepage which only contains like only images or some JavaScript, some animations, and basically when I just view it like using this Chrome extension, I see like the number of words is like 50 or something. Like
What Chrome extension is that?
detailed SEO, yeah, this one also shows you the number of words per page. Of course, you can check it in by crawling the site. Screaming Frog will also show you that low content pages, whatever you set it up to show you. So I would say it is, in my experience, important to have this content on the homepage, have this structure of headings, like at least say a couple of sentences about each area of your site, each category of your site, depending what type of site is it. So I would say this is because it makes it very hard for Google to really understand what you're talking about, right?
So that extension is detailed SEO extension.
Detailed SEO, yes.
It's really funny. So just before I hit record, we were chatting about Viper Chill. I was saying, you got to follow this guy. That's his extension and his website.
So it looks like, so, I knew him, but I didn't know his
So anybody, if you don't follow Viper Chill, he doesn't tweet a lot, but he's, been in SEO a long time, and he definitely knows what he's talking about. He's got some great resources. The other thing I saw the other day was a homepage title tag that said home.
Oh, that's a very, I think I have it on my list too. Yeah. This is quite common.
That's a good one. And one I often don't even really think about a lot, but now that I'm reflecting back, there's a lot of sites that just don't put any content on their homepage, which is crazy. So, all right, let's do mistake number 5.
Okay. So let me check. I would say author box, which contains the author name as admin. So this is not very good in terms of EAT and establishing your authority and letting know Google and users who is the author. So on top of that, of being not sorry.
Sorry to cut you off there. I was going to say I might be stepping into dangerous territory here among some SEOs, but what is your take on EAT? I've always and still held the stance that it's good to know about, but when I do SEO, I spend 0 seconds ever even thinking about it, and can definitely rank pages and get traffic. That's what I do all day, right? And I think that to me, the so-called EAT signals are things that should kind of show up in your content, but I think of it like maybe cooking, right? So you're going to end something with a pizza, right? But the ingredients I put into that is cheese and tomatoes and bread and blah, blah, blah. And so I think about the ingredients that I'm putting into good content, which is clear writing, topically complete, good sentiment, all that stuff, which should output something that might align with EAT. But what are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think that there's a EAT ranking factor? Do we focus on it too much? Do you think about it when you create content? I'd love to hear your thoughts about EAT.
To be honest, I was thinking about it a lot when I was creating my own sites, because I knew that I'm not known at all, and I just wanted to be able to escalate my progress. I'm not sure if this is because of that, but I did my best to show Google that I have experience. I linked my LinkedIn page. I was trying to show all my credentials. I'm still updating my credentials whenever something new appears. I add it to my about page so that Google knows that I am I even use schema same as to point to the places where I'm cited. I'm not sure if that's the reason, but I was able to get a lot of traction to my site after 5 months, which is I would say relatively quickly. That's considered quick. that I was talking about SEO, which is a very high competition kind of area.
Yep.
So I usually look at some general things that can show that we are talking about expertise, that we're talking about a person who has some authority. So I'm into having those author boxes, but which actually present the credentials you have. I think it is definitely more important in case of medical sites, yes, where this YMYL thing is a thing. But YMYL, I'm not too obsessive about it.
I had an interesting experience. So I think it would be a very interesting test for a site that ranks well to pull off all of the so-called EAT signals or things and then see what happens. So I was working with a company that was publishing a lot of nutrition and diet and food related content. One of their writers left the company. They removed his author name from every single post and just put a brand name account instead. And not one single thing happened to the rankings whatsoever. And they rank really well for things related to carnivore diet and things that are very competitive. So I think it'd be a fascinating experiment to like try to pull away these eat signals and see what happens. But back to the admin thing. So what do you think a company should do? Like some companies or sites, they don't want to put a name, or an individual on their content. So what do you recommend in that case?
So I would say maybe do not indicate anyone or just show like the company name. So instead of putting my name, I could put like SEOSLY, like authored by SEOSLY or SEOSLY team, something
Oh,
like that.
business name or yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good tip. And I agree, by the way, I do recommend that companies put author names or some sort of editor name or something, and then have that link to an actual profile page like you've done with all of your credentials. I think this is a really good moment to mention the sponsor for a minute or two. So I do sponsorships a little different here. We're going to talk to you about Stacker Studio. I have nothing to read, right? And I think after mistake 5, without these, we're talking about credential signals, is a really good time to talk about Stacker, because that's kind of one of the things that Stacker Studio helps businesses do. And I'm curious, Olga, like from your experience, how hard is it to get picked up by like national publications or local publications? Like what does it take to get in Newsweek or San Francisco Gate or MSN or like sites like that? Like that's kind of hard to do, right? From your experience?
Yeah, definitely. Unless your content kind of is publishes some very unique piece of research, like you actually like compile something that's very, very interesting, and you, for example, rank for like something plus statistics,
Yes.
then usually it is quite hard to get unless you know
Right.
someone in those publications.
And I love that example because I do recommend sites create statistics content for that reason. Stacker Studio, so basically, let me step back for a second. So Amanda Milligan works with Stacker Studio. She reached out to me. She originally was running the Fractal podcast. So Fractal's a great content marketing company. And when she reached out, I already knew Amanda and absolutely 1000% trust anything she would recommend. So when she reached out, she's like, hey, I'm with Stacker. We'd love to sponsor you. I like most times I get a sponsor request, I just like hit delete, right? I've only had one other sponsor ever on the podcast. But what Stacker does is they actually do exactly what you just said, Olga. They will create well-researched original content for your site with statistics, with studies, with data, and so you can take that content and publish it on your site. Then it goes on stacker.com, which is basically kind of like a newswire. And it gets published there. And then what happens, it goes out into Stacker's ecosystem where it gets picked up by like real examples of sites that some of Stacker's content has been picked up on is San Francisco Gate, Houston Chronicle, MSN, Newsweek, Daily News. And in fact, they guarantee that it gets picked up by over 50 publications, or 50 minimum, for every individual story that you do, which is pretty incredible. I mean, we were just saying how hard it is to get picked up by publications like this. And what's really cool, like I went and studied exactly, I asked for examples. I went and looked at these articles. The articles are really good. They don't do anything weird. Like it's all natural anchor text. They will canonical back to your site. So you're not just like showing up with all these like random backlinks everywhere. And what I think this is really going to do for anybody that might wants to check out Stacker is it gets you such huge amount of brand awareness, because the amount of eyes on across all those 50 or more publications that you could receive for your brand is pretty huge. And then there's a lot of things you can do with that. It spreads awareness, but let's say you're in Newsweek, you can take that Newsweek logo and put it on your website as a sign of credit. I mean, we were just talking about doing stuff like that for Eat Factors. So anyways, go to studio.stacker.com/wire and they will give you 20% off.
To be honest,
your story.
I think I will be interested.
Yeah, right.
Because
Doesn't
this
it
is
sound?
like,
Yeah.
because I also like cooperate with an agency who does lawyer SEO, and we are like actually now in the process of trying to compile such pieces of data, but this is like difficult, like time consuming, and we are actually looking for someone who can do that. So
Yeah, it seems really great because, like I said, they create the content for you. It goes on your site, so so you can get the traffic, then you get picked up. So there's so many
So
multipliers of
yeah,
benefits from that.
definitely like give me like all the data I need and I will
Yeah.
get started once we finish.
So it's studio.stacker.com/wire for 20% off. Okay, awesome. Let's get to mistake number 6.
Okay, so let me pick one. How about maybe let's talk about speed, horrendous speed score,
Okay.
like speed, core web vitals. So there are like two types of sites I notice in my audits. One type are the sites which have like usually nice speed scores in Google PageSpeed Insights and pass Core Web Vitals. And these sites are usually, I would say, okay. As long as you pass Core Web Vitals, you are okay.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there are sites which have like low scores and or sometimes it is like even the other way around. They have high scores in PageSpeed Insights in this lab data, and they do not pass Core Web Vitals. So if I come across such a site, I usually recommend like improving Core Web Vitals, but I don't think this is like such a huge ranking factor. But a few times I came across a site whose load time was, I think, more than 1 minute. So like time to interactive was more than 1 minute, or like something really crazy. Like when you see this, those screenshots as Google is rendering, like everything is white, and
Wow.
until 1 minute passes, the site kind of starts to load. So if the site is that slow, I would say then this is a critical mistake and it should be fixed ASAP. And on the other hand, if the site is kind of in the 60s, but it passes Core Web Vitals and you can check that in Google Search Console. On Google PageSpeed Insights will show you that as well. If there is enough data, then I think it is okay, and there is no need to keep obsessing. Like if you're on 85, I think you can drop it if you pass Core Web Vitals.
So why would a site have good lab scores, but bad field data in Core Web Vitals? Like, how could that happen?
Yeah, so I think that can happen, for example, if the users come from countries which have lower internet speeds. Like if you have a lot of users from, say, I think India, then you may, I'm not saying, I think, but because I saw such an example that the site had a lot of users from India and it was like doing okay in terms of lab, but in terms of Core Web Vitals, it was doing not okay. On the other hand, I had like a reverse case as well, when the site was doing terribly in terms of lab data, but Core Web Vitals were totally passed. And this was like a local site of a local store here in my city in Poland. And in this city, actually, like the speed connection is very, very fast. It's like 5G. We have 5G. And this site is like you can deliver food to your house through that site. And basically the only people are from this very city. So Core Web Vitals are passed here, but lab data like JavaScript, everything is like terrible.
Yeah. I think so Ashley Berman-Hale that I mentioned at the beginning, who introduced us, she has shared a really great chart that shows, I think it quantifies the amount of money that it costs for people in different parts of the world to load content. I'll try to dig that up and put it in the show notes. It's a really great chart, but it actually just shows you the cost involved.
Yeah.
And I experienced this like firsthand because my wife and I were in Yosemite National Park earlier this year, and the internet was next to nothing out there, right? And that made me really appreciate fallback fonts. So fallback font is when you allow a web font to just load before your custom font is downloaded to the browser. Oh my goodness. There was a site I was looking at where, like, if I didn't have a fallback font, I would have just totally left because the font was taking so long to load. And I think, if anyone's ever experienced trying to browse the internet on a slow connection, you really appreciate things like that.
Exactly.
I think we're on mistake 7 now.
Okay.
I think we're going to try to get to 10.
Okay, so maybe this will be a WordPress mistake. So one of the sites I was auditing this time, I had full access to WordPress. This was like mostly my job was to increase speed. So I logged into WordPress, and what I saw there was like I think around 70 active plugins.
70.
Most of them, of course, were outdated. WordPress was outdated, so everything was outdated.
Yeah.
And like those plugins, there was like different page builders. This was like such a mess that it was like hard even to navigate through this WordPress. It was so slow. So
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, keeping WordPress clean, plugins, using only the plugins that you actually use, and getting rid of the rest. Not only is it like a security issue, but of course also a speed issue as well.
Yeah. I think that's tops. I think I worked on a site where I saw maybe 50 or 60 plugins. I think that tops that. Great. What is mistake number 8?
Okay, so I have so many that I don't know which one to choose. Okay, maybe this one. URL addresses, permalinks, which have dates in them. So URL address is not like a ranking factor. I think John Mueller was very clear about it, that Google does not really look at the URL address, that it may look at the URL address before indexing content, like something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I think this is more like user experience type of thing.
Yep.
If you have like 2010 in the URL address, and someone like sees that link, they will like automatically think this is like an outdated article, even if you have been updating this. And then if you change the URL, then of course you are creating a new article. You have to like do the redirect if you change the URL. So I would say keep permalinks as clean as possible without adding dates there.
Is this referring to, so in some blog setups, the subfolder will be the year and the month and the day?
Mm-hmm, yes.
Is this referring to that, or is this referring to, in the actual post name, that final path in the URL? If it's like best SEO conferences 2010.
I would say, yeah, that's a good point. So I would say both are like the default, sometimes default setting in WordPress, other CMSs, but also if you like are doing, for example, Black Friday deals 2020, then you probably don't want to have year in the URL because you will be creating a new page every year.
If you want to update it, you have to keep creating redirects to put a new year in the URL. Now, it's interesting that I think I might have heard also John Mueller mention URLs not having a factor. What about, and this is where all the nuances come in with what Googlers say, what about though if you're getting backlinks to that page with the URL being the anchor text? Might that have an impact on rankings for that page because you're getting descriptive anchor text in external backlinks
to this unfriendly URL?
Well, I think what you were saying, were you saying John Mueller said that URLs are not a ranking factor?
Mm-hmm.
So what about though? I mean, so should people still name the URLs with good, clear keywords in them, because you might get backlinks with the URL as the anchor text?
Yeah, sure. I would say yes. Like it will be even easier for users if they see this link, like the naked link, they will know what this thing is about. So I would still, of course, recommend adding like keywords we care about. So
I think it's interesting how a lot of people from Google can kind of go around a topic. So the one prime example I always think of is click-through rate. And does click-through rate impact rankings? And I think literally no, they don't use click-through rate, but they do use probably long click, short clicks, bouncing back to the SERP, like that kind of stuff. It's just interesting how they can just use the language to kind of get around the issue.
Yeah.
What is mistake number 9? I see one in here too that I might want to ask about, but what are you thinking about for mistake number 9?
Mistake number 9, duplicate home pages with incorrect redirects. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this was like, this happens to be mistake number 9 as well on my list. So this is again, I saw this at least a couple of times when there was a site like the main domain. Then, for example, from logo, it linked to the domain slash index .html, for example, and there was also like this www version without the redirection to non-www. So actually, like one site I think had like 4 different homepage versions. Of course, they were all the same, and I think like Google used like one as a canonical kind of the main one, but the links were still pointing to a different one. So I would always make sure this is like unified. If you have different versions, like redirect them to one, the cleanest one possible, and make sure internal links are updated as well.
That's a really good tip. I also, do you mind if I pick mistake number 10?
Sure.
I lost it in the list now, but I think it said blocking traffic from the US.
Yes.
What is that all about? I don't know if I've ever seen that.
Yeah, I think I the first time I came across that in some Google SEO office hours, I heard that this may be the cause why like Google is not crawling or indexing the site. So because there are some sites, some shops, like this was the case I had like at the agency. So they had like different versions of stores for different countries, and they did not want their UK-based store to receive traffic from the US. So they basically blocked all like bot traffic, all traffic from the US, so that they don't see it. So don't see that version, or they were redirected to a different site, to their US-based store.
Okay.
And as a result, like Google wasn't able to.
Because Google's in the US.
Yes, because Google is usually, at least now, always, I think, crawling from the US. So
do you know were they using IP addresses? How were they blocking?
Yes, I think, yeah.
So would you just need to essentially whitelist the Google IP? Let's say you still want to block US traffic, but allow Googlebot.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
You would just whitelist Googlebot's IP address or something.
Yes, because probably. I think they like publish the list of all their bot IP addresses, I think. So.
Oh, wow. In doing this for over 12 years, I don't think I've ever heard of that one. That's a new one to me. So everyone can go to, speaking of good URLs, SEOSLY.com/blog/SEO Mistakes. Great, simple, clean URL to check out all 100. I did want to take some time to answer some of the questions that came in from Twitter. We've picked out 4. So the first one is Mike Blazer says, how do you use images to help pages rank better? So
generally, I would say if you create content, you should create images, add images to that actually kind of relate to that content.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen like a stock image, like, because I've seen a lot of sites which have like a blog post and there's one minute image which is a stock photo. So in that case, it definitely won't help you. But if you create original images, like in the case of my blog, I always take a lot of screenshots, and sometimes some of my tutorials have like more than 100 images, and these are like all my images. Wow. And I make sure to add alt text, to name file names like in the correct way. I also add descriptions, and actually I'm getting some traffic from Google image search this way. So I would say make sure they actually correspond to what you are talking about. But at the same time, remember about accessibility, and do not like use those images to stuff keywords, but actually describe what's on those images. But if they correspond to the content, then it will be easy for you to create alt text that contains the phrases you care about.
I think one huge problem that I see a lot is that working on a site, take the image, reverse image, search it in Google, and you see that 1,000 other sites use that same exact image. So I think that's something anybody could do to test for the uniqueness of your visuals.
Yes, exactly.
So Ocean of Noise wants to know, what are the key elements that you recommend including a technical site audit? So I would say this is something I've been preaching for a long time.
always start your your technical SEO audit with diving deep into Google Search Console and seeing what's actually happening there, because usually this will like change the entire direction of your audit. If you, for example, log in there and see that, oh, there is like 1 million indexed URLs, and then you check those URLs, and these are like, for example, some Chinese, Japanese kind of types of URLs. So this was like one of the things I also like identified in my audits. The site had like 100 pages, and 500,000 pages of that sort were indexed because the site was hacked. So
Oh, wow. Did that
so
show up under hacked, or like, isn't there a spot in Search Console where you can see hacked or malicious
yes,
content?
yes, security issues. And the funny
Security.
thing is that security issues was not showing anything,
Oh,
but
really?
like the coverage report was like growing every day, like crazy, that to the point that even Ahrefs started to show like a huge number of Chinese, Japanese keywords. And this site was like had this line in organic keywords in Ahrefs, but these were like all Chinese, Japanese kind of keywords.
Wow. Anything else that you recommend for including in a technical SEO audit, key elements wise?
I would say make sure to use a bunch of tools, not just one tool, and do not rely on automatic kind of reports. Those
Right.
tools are great. They can show you like some things they think that are mistakes, but you should like always you shouldn't like rely on that. You should have your own checklist and follow your own checklist and use your tools to check those things you have on your list, not like the other way around, when the tool is telling you what's the problem, and usually this is not a problem.
Yeah.
Once you like use your SEO experience, you see that, for example, HTML text ratio shouldn't be like that high because it
Right.
doesn't matter, for example.
One thing that I always think of that I can't find with a tool and only find manually is like a soft 404 page. So you just type in a bad URL on
Yeah.
purpose and see that it returns a 200 code. And like a lot of developers or sites will do that. Will set up their 404 pages or broken pages at 301 to 200 or 302 to 200. I always do in my checklist.
So yeah,
So
this was like, yeah, I once like had this. I was reviewing an affiliate site, doing an audit, and I crawled it. This was a huge site, and I noticed, wow, this site has no 404s.
right.
That's crazy. And then this was exactly the thing. The site was like redirecting to the homepage.
Right. Yeah. Because at first you're almost like, wow, they're doing a great job. They're clearing
Yeah,
up all their 404s. And then you realize that it's not that at all.
yeah, exactly.
So at Darth Nick on Twitter, he wants to know, have you ever seen a significant difference in performance when it comes to using HTML tables versus images to showcase information and data, ignoring table-rich snippets? He's curious if nicely designed table images are sometimes better than styled HTML tables.
So here is kind of my take on it. I've not like seen any difference. I haven't like compared like this data to that data, these types of pages, but I would always recommend, if you have some text, some numbers, some data that can be in the written form, I wouldn't put it in the text. So if you have data, put it in the table. If you have like images, make them images. I wouldn't necessarily create like nicely looking images and putting them there as like as tables in the form of images, because I think this is like this is you're not like doing the best in terms of SEO if you're doing this way.
Right. Well, the problem I see with images is Google can't see the text in the image. On the other side of that, I just had a client put an HTML table in a post the other day, and they're getting a table snippet
Yeah,
as the feature
exactly.
snippet too, which is a good
Exactly.
benefit. We have another Twitter question that I want to ask a little bit about your blogging, but I'm going to totally butcher this name, but Mohammed, I don't know how to say the rest of that, but Mohammed wants to know, how do you make clients understand the importance of tech SEO, especially for those clients who are obsessed with getting #1 rankings or ranking for all their industry terms, etc.?
So maybe my answer won't be like the answer you are expecting, but I would say I don't accept such clients. If the client is like too focused, they want to rank for, I don't know, marketing, and this is like they want to do that, and then I simply I'm not able, probably I won't be able to do that. So I usually do not take on such clients. I only work with clients who actually understand the value of SEO. They understand that they need this. So my advice would be to, if the client does not understand it, it means that you should probably look for a client who does. And I'm pretty sure there are a ton of people who understand the value of SEO and would be happy to work with you. Of course, there are exceptions. Sometimes it is possible to talk some sense into them, to show them, for example, how search works, show them some Google documentation, but it does not always work. So that's my take on it.
I like that take a lot, and I agree. I tend to not try to sell SEO to the unsellable. One thing I find too is for anybody to try to segment. So don't think of tech SEO as just one thing, right? Maybe there's a client that really does care about page speed because they care about conversions. So that's a easier sell when it comes to tech SEO. Maybe they don't care about structured data because they don't see the benefit in that from another perspective. So what it might be for me is to try to find that one thing that might overlap with another marketing or business goal that they have.
Yeah.
So I want to
Makes
talk
perfect sense.
about your blogging. So as you mentioned, when we first met through United Search, you had just started blogging. I remember your first couple posts. I thought they were amazing. In fact, when we did the mentoring thing, I was mentoring you with speaking, but I felt like I was actually the one learning a lot when it came to tech SEO. When you started blogging, fast forward now, it's like a year and a half later, and like we mentioned, your blog's doing amazing. You have a lot of content. I always see you getting shared a ton on Twitter, etc. When you started, though, did you have like a plan for that, or did you kind of just take it one post after another and it just sort of or did you have a master plan in mind?
Yeah, so I like the planning stage. So actually, I started planning, I think, around May and June 2020 and July. This was like my planning phase. So I actually did a very, very thorough keyword research. I always, when I, for example, prepare a client for migration or do migration or create a new site, I always like to create such a tree. I like to draw the structure of the site, like a mind map, something like that. And this is what I did here. Of course, it evolved. It kept changing. My kind of ideas kept changing, but I had like a very, very thorough long list of keywords I thought I would write about.
Oh, cool. So
And
that's
then
also your process for coming up with the topics, the actual
yes, but
topics.
now since my site is already getting some traffic from Google Discover and from organic, and there are some positions, I think I will now switch my strategy a bit to look for keywords for which I already rank on like lower positions, but about which I don't have like exactly the content. I noticed a lot of nice keywords that I might use and which I don't talk about yet on my site. So I would say this way.
Do you have, I know you talked a little bit about your process for creating content for the SEO Mistakes article. Do you have sort of a go-to process for all your content when it comes to
I
creating it?
I would say if I create a piece like that, then this is usually, I know that I want to talk about SEO mistakes, so I just like sit down and write it for a couple of days. But in other cases, I do keyword research. I have the plan of, for example, what keywords I want to use, how I want to link it. But it is not like very, very strict. It is not like a content brief I would give to an author. I
Right.
simply like maybe more intuitively like put those keywords in the places where I think they should be. I update internal links. But recently, I've also started. I've been using Also Ask this tool. I
Mhm.
generated like around 1,000 different questions about SEO, and I started answering them on my blog and on my YouTube channel. And I'm curious to see how it works out. Already, I noticed a few nice rankings. Like if you type one of those questions, not only do you see my YouTube video in SERPs, but you also can see my blog post, which also like has the written form, which has the embedded video. So this is like something I'm experimenting with.
It's great that you actually use all this SEO to do your blog. I know when I used to do more SEO blogging in the past, I kind of didn't do a lot of that. I would just think of topics that I wanted to write about, and maybe I should have been more, a little more calculated about it. I also want to ask too, recently you had a situation happen where somebody stole an entire post of yours or something. And
Yeah, that was like 20K words.
yeah, lots of content, made a book about it, put that book on Amazon and was selling it. You very well articulated in an articulated way confronted this person on Twitter. I'm not even going to say their name, but you sort of confronted the situation. Then that person doubled down and said that you were the one that actually stole their content. And I'm sure a lot of listeners are a little familiar with some of the backstory, but what I wanted to ask you about it was like, what has helped you sort of bounce back from a situation like that? Like, I'm sure it was really hard to deal with, right? Like, not to mention all the hours and the energy and right. But what are the things that have helped you sort of bounce back from that? Because also I'm thinking about other people that get into these situations, and what might be helpful for them as well.
Sure. So at first, like I was like very stressful, especially that I was like after one surgery and waiting for another. So then I was like, not only I was feeling unwell, and I couldn't like focus on my recovery, but I kept checking Twitter and what's going on. But I think what helped me was like a very, very huge support I gained from the entire SEO community. Basically, I got hundreds of messages on Twitter, through email. People were supporting me, telling me that they knew that I created that because I created that back in 2020, even though the person claimed that I stole it in 2021. So people like were even some people like Eleda Solis, I think, Brody Clark, someone else, they were like sharing on Twitter that I support Olga, even though like this kind of storm is happening. So I would say that the great support like let me kind of kept doing what I do, because I had a moment when I thought that maybe I should just delete all my accounts and disappear.
Wow.
But when I was getting this support, then I also get some legal support, and I am now in the process of copywriting my entire content, registering the trademark, and then actually publishing a book. But I just don't want to publish this post. I want to like make it way better. So I will be writing a lot of new content for that book. So I would say support, immense support I got, and it kind of, and actually I got an apology. So this kind of also.
The person did apologize to you.
Yes.
In private.
Yes, in private. Yes. So I would say, yeah.
Now, did that person take down their content that was claiming that you stole their?
I think Amazon kind of took it down. Yes.
Yeah.
Before that.
Well, I'm sure
I haven't checked yet now what's the situation, but I will check whether maybe something changed again.
Well, I'm sure on behalf of all the listeners and everything, we're glad you're still around. Your information is really valuable and unique, and we all get so much value out of it. And it sounds like you learned a bit about copywriting, and so like, can you just copyright your blog content? Like, how does that work? I've never actually even thought about doing that.
Yeah, so now I know a lot about this. So I have a very nice lawyer who is kind of walking me through the entire process now. So if you have like your own website, it gets automatic copyrights. But if you publish in the US, you are not that well protected. Even though I'm based in Europe, my work is not that well protected in the US. So the best way to do that is to simply file like copyrights. You can like copyright like specific blog posts or like the whole series or blog posts. And once you do that, like the fines are very, very, very high, like even in hundreds, tens or thousands, tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars once you your copyrighted material gets stolen. You have this automatic copyright as well. So if you like file like DMCA or something like that, they will take it down. but you're not that well protected if you actually file this copyright registration. So this is what I'm doing, and the same regarding my SEOSLY kind of name.
Right. You can trade now. That's a trademark, right?
Yes, it's going to be.
That's like
It's
a name.
like now in the process. Yes.
Okay. For glad you made it through all that, and like I said, we're
Yeah.
glad you're still here. And speaking of the industry, are you doing any speaking coming up or anything else? You know, besides the podcasts and blogging and whatnot. Where can people find you?
So I am now starting to work on my SEO podcast, which I hope to release in September.
Oh, you're launching a podcast?
Yes, I
Amazing.
am. Finally.
Okay, what's going to be the name? Do you have a name for it?
I think it will be SEO Podcast by SEOSLY. Maybe I will come up with something better, but I hear that SEO for podcasts is not that advanced, and it is good to be called, to have your keyword in the name. So it's definitely going to be something around SEO podcast.
Oh, so ranking, yes. So way back when I started mine, I semi-regret naming it Experts in the Wire. I thought it was being clever, and I also thought at some point it would be more broader marketing podcast, so I didn't want to actually pigeonhole it into SEO. But now looking back, I just wish I'd called it the Evolving SEO Podcast, because that's what half people call it anyways. So I think you're probably smart to like stick with your brand and.
But yeah, it may get more sophisticated, like SEO for podcasts. But other than that, I have a few invitations. I will be talking with Olga on Crawling Mondays. I'm also invited to Search with Candor podcasts. So I have a bunch of podcasts, and yeah, I hope in 2023 once I get my book, because a lot is going on in my life as well right now. I hope in 2023 I will be able to attend some in-person conference, maybe in the US.
Oh, awesome. Oh, that'd be amazing. So just to wrap up, tell everyone again your website, but then also Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever else people can find you online.
So I am at Twitter. My handle is at Olga Zarzeczna. I think it may be hard.
We'll put in the show notes too.
Other than that, it's SEOSLY.com, and this is where you can find me. I also have a YouTube channel, a fresh new one, so you can also check my videos there. And I'm on LinkedIn as well.
We did not even chat about your YouTube channel, which seems like it's going well also.
Yes.
Maybe you'll have to come back to the show at some point and we can chat YouTube.
I am getting near to 1K subscribers, so this is like my milestone. It is very like.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, if you're listening to this, definitely go subscribe. And is it SEOSLY on YouTube as well?
Yes, on YouTube. It is just SEOSLY-Olga Zarzeczna, and you will find me.
Awesome. All right, everybody listening to this, go subscribe to that. We'll get you over 1K.
Thanks.
Amazing. Well, this has been a fantastic episode 125 of Experts in the Wire. Thanks, Olga, for being the guest today, and we'll talk to everyone next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.